Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Threezero DLX scale Transformers figure unboxing and review video. Now today we are going to be taking a look at none other than Jetfire, based off his appearance in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. I know, not everyone's favourite Transformers movie, it definitely isn't mine. But seeing as though this guy can break down and combine with Optimus to create Jetpower Optimus Prime, you bet I'm pretty darn excited to get him out here. Now I do have to say a massive thank you to Threezero for sending me this production sample. If you are looking to grab him, he is available from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and a points-based reward system. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe and bell notification icon, plus the join button for more info on Justin's Collection Plus, the channel membership. What we are going to do now though is get the box laying flat in the light box and do the unboxing. Here of course we have the box art, and there are in my opinion two things of note. Number one, the box itself is absolutely enormous in pretty much every dimension. Number two, it's not super heavy. So I'm curious, how much diecast is actually in Jetfire? On the side of the box, Transformers. On the other, a picture of Jetfire himself, his name down below, as well as an Autobot logo. On the side of the box, an image of Jetfire from the side profile, plus his name. And then of course, on the back, a silhouetted image of Jetpower Prime. And you guessed it, another picture of Jetfire. Now, unlike the usual DLX style boxes, it doesn't just open up and the clam tray is inside. This time, Jetfire is housed in multiple blocks of foam. So to save trying to wrangle it on camera, now this isn't what I was expecting at all. You have multiple foam blocks of various parts and pieces that will eventually combine to make up Jetfire. Now usually these DLX figures come pre-assembled because they are just that, figures rather than model kits. But seeing as though these parts can be placed on Optimus Prime, I would suppose if you wanted to skip building Jetfire entirely and just build Jetpower Prime, then yeah, you can absolutely get that done. What we are going to do now though is two things. Number one, build Jetfire, and number two, get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Here we have all the parts and pieces for Jetfire himself. Now the reason why I make that distinction is because there are a bunch of other pieces, but they're for the Jetpower Prime combo. More on that a little bit later on. Now you do get the standard DLX style display base. It's rather thin, it's quite wide and quite deep, and you have a ton of tech detail on the surface. Now my only complaint here is that if I bring in one of Jetfire's feet, as you can see, he is huge. I don't think this display base is going to cut it. Now up top you do have a fully articulated arm that can lock in position. So say for instance you want it facing all the way up, you simply flip the switch and then it's not going anywhere. You can also extend the top arm and collapse it down, plus this piece is fully articulated. It also does nicely connect into Jetfire, so when he's on the display base he is very secure. Next up, instead of going with articulated finger hands like they do for the premium scale figures, we get some swap out ones. Now they are made of a softer rubbery style plastic, but the detail is still very sharp. There's multiple layers of paint, there's washers, there's dirt and grime, plus you do have a peg port on the palm that nicely keys in to the next accessory, which is of course his walking stick, very cleverly made out of his landing gear. Now you do have some wheels sculpted in down below, unfortunately they don't rotate, but I guess that's a good thing, because if you're using this to help him balance and the wheels could move, then yes, it might have slid around in the display. You do have some weathering on the surface, and the same thing can be said for the entire apparatus. You do have multiple panels and linkages and struts that have all come together to make up the walking stick. You also have a base layer of gunmetal with some dry brushing of silver on the surface. Now up top you do have a peg, and that does nicely peg in to the hand, so it is a very secure fit. Now he does also come with some stickers and a very lengthy manual. Now for me, I'm not a huge fan of stickers, so I'm going to skip them entirely. But for the manual, it is very, very thick. That's because it basically details how to break down Jetfire and then combine him with Optimus to create Jetpower Optimus Prime. And yeah, I'm super excited to see this in person. What we are going to do now though is get Jetfire himself out here and take a closer look. Here we have him standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. And I don't really know what to look at here. There is so much going on. But I guess that's pretty much perfect for Jetfire. He transforms out of this massive SR-71. In the movie, there are a bunch of parts and pieces that do have to collide and combine and slot into one another to create his robot mode. And I think Threezero have captured the look perfectly, all the way down to his crunched and hunched over physique with his walking stick. It looks pretty much bang on to the CGI model. Now let me get the elephant out of the room first. No, he doesn't transform. Does that bother me? Not in the least. There are transforming versions of Jetfire, this simply isn't it. What we are going to do now though is take him off the rotating turntable, punch in, and take a closer look at the details. Here we have him up close and personal. Now honestly, I don't really know where to begin. There is so much to look at. But I guess we'll start off with the head sculpt first. Just like the rest of him, it is bang on to the CGI model. You do have multiple tendril pieces or beard pieces that are a rubbery plastic, so you don't have to worry about snapping these off when you articulate the head sculpt. Now the eyes do light up, but it does take a very specific type of large button cell battery. And unfortunately, every single store that I went to in the local vicinity was out of that battery. Of course, just my luck. But yes, those eyes do light up a nice piercing red. Up top, you do have the cockpit and the nose cone section of the SR-71, and it is fully articulated. That means when you move the head sculpt up to expose all of this detail underneath, it nicely moves up and out of the way. You do have multiple gears and linkages and multiple different layers of paint. You've got gunmetal, gold, bright chrome silver, copper, and a bunch of silver dry brushing on the surface. The same thing can be said for the SR-71 pieces. It's this kind of dark bluish grey, but then a bunch of silver dry brushing. Now, around the back, there is a lot to look at. You've got multiple little fins and wings, and most of these are articulated, and you have to assemble all of this. Follow the instructions, take your time, and you are going to be just fine. That same bluish grey paint application for pretty much every single panel, plus some red striping and the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works symbol. They are of course responsible for the creation of the SR-71. Now you do have a bunch of these little panels that do move around down on the spine. When we get to articulation, which is a clip that I am absolutely dreading, I'm sure a lot of these pieces are going to go flying. The biggest culprits for me are these silver panels and these ones down here. They clip on, but they fall off a lot. Now the arms are also a very interesting design. You have, once again, I know I've said this a lot, but multiple flaps and panels. They, yes, can move around, it seems like I'm constantly repeating myself, and there is a ton of tech detail on the surface. Plus, those hands can swap out on the ball joints, which I know we discussed earlier. Now for the torso, this is a very interesting design. It almost looks like he has the makings of some abs, but he is very crunched and hunched over. Now for the legs, these massive pieces, which I guess would have been the engines of the SR-71 kind of exploded outwards, they do have some arms and linkages connecting them to the main engine section. These, once again, need to be assembled by you, but the detail is great. There are washers, it looks like they have been wind-burnt, as the SR-71 would have taken flight. For the main engine sections, multiple hoses and some washers on the surface, plus down here for the feet, yes, you guessed it, a lot more is going on. You also have some of those ancient Cybertronian glyphs that Sam was drawing on top of Jetfire's toes, and even those little toes are articulated. Plus you do have some sand and dirt and grime in all of those crevices. On the underside of the feet, they too are fully detailed. This leg for some reason is a little bit more wobbly. But at the end of the day, for something as complex as this guy is, I think Threezero have done a commendable job. Just before we move on, there were a couple of things that stuck out to me after I'd already finished filming the previous clip. Now they are these metallic blue and red panels. They are nicely hidden behind other panels, but around the back they are very clearly visible. The reason why I think they're here is because when you combine the pieces with Optimus Prime, who is metallic blue and red, it's going to be a much more cohesive look. But on the back of Jetfire, I don't think having these here is super accurate. They are at least nicely painted with a good metallic flake and some dirt and grime and chipping on the surface, but if you wanted to, you could absolutely remove them. The other thing that I noticed is you can remove this piece around the back. That's because if you do bring in the display base, it can connect up, so it is a very nice and secure connection. Now for a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have Jetfire alongside Optimus Prime from the same film. Yeah, the one he's going to combine with. And as you can see, Jetfire is huge. He's taller, he's wider, he's bulkier, there is just so much going on, as I know we've already discussed. Now, he kind of feels more along the lines of one of the premium scale figures. That's how big this guy is. But at the end of the day, it is accurate. Jetfire was huge in the film. So if you are looking to pick up Jetfire to pose him alongside Prime rather than combine the two, yeah, this is what that looks like. Going over articulation. Now bear in mind this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. I'm sure when you get yours in hand, you can push the joints slightly further than I am willing to go. Now this right here is the clip that I've been dreading the most. I know that as I move all of the joints around, pieces are going to pop off. But fret not, you can simply peg them right back on. Now starting off with the head sculpt, it is on multiple ball joints and hinges, going up and down, swivel and then pivot side to side. The arms will go out and up, they will of course go forward and back, they are on a butterfly joint at the shoulder that also hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow that gets you just past 90, and then a ball joint for the wrist peg. Now, as you can see, multiple of these pieces are colliding, plus he is rather unwieldy, so it's a little bit tricky to move the joints around. The torso can crunch forward and back, swivel and pivot side to side. The legs are on super stiff and sturdy joints going forward and back, going in and out, swivel at the upper thigh. You also have a ratcheted swivel at the knee that unfortunately is a little bit loose on mine. When you go ahead and assemble this guy, this piece simply slots in and you can see some ratcheted teeth. But unfortunately, it's not the sturdiest connection. You do have a ratchet forward and back for the knees, and then multiple joints that come together to make up the ankle, moving forward and back down below, plus the foot can pivot and hinge side to side. And then lastly, you do have some front toe articulation. Here we have Jetpower Prime fully assembled, and oh boy, I was not ready for this. It looks awesome. He's big, he's beefy, there is just so much to look at. He's got the massive gun, he's got the big jet power upgrades, and he has been extended by a rather significant amount, so now he is much taller. If you were looking for a centerpiece in the collection, yeah, I think this guy is destined to be it. Now, unfortunately, because he is so big, so cumbersome, and there are so many moving parts and pieces, you saw how I struggled with Jetfire just before, I won't be able to take him off the turntable. So while he's spinning, I'm hoping that you were able to absorb all of the awesome detail work. The paint applications on Prime are stunning. Now, the articulation is going to be relatively limited. He's not a statue, you can still move him around, but be a little bit more cautious, because there are a bunch of smaller little bits and pieces that have been pegged on. Now, as good as this guy looks, I still have one complaint, and it's the assembly. It takes forever. Now, I know it's not necessarily Threezero's fault. The design from the film was super complex, therefore they needed to break Jetfire down into a million pieces, and then find a way to install those pieces onto Optimus Prime. For the most part, they do a very good job. But just expect to have to sit down for a while to get this guy to look how he looks right now. Now, they do have an instructional video, that's great. It shows you how to break down Optimus, how to break down Jetfire, and then combine the two. I would suggest bringing up that video rather than going with the paper instruction manual, because some of the pieces do have to go in at certain and very specific angles, and the manual doesn't do a great job of showing you that. Now, in the display, am I going to have him as Jetpower Prime or Jetfire and Optimus? Well, that's a question that I'm going to answer a little bit later on. Now, of course, for a quick side-by-side comparison with Jetpower Prime, here we have the last night version of Bumblebee. And as you can see, Prime absolutely towers over him. He's not only taller, he's a lot wider, there is just so much more going on. Like I said just before, this guy is a true centerpiece. Now, you're not really going to want to pose Prime unless you're a glutton for punishment, because pieces are going to fall off constantly. This is kind of one of those pieces that's a set and forget figure. You pop him in a pose, pop all the pieces on, situate everything correctly, then put him in the display and away you go. But as you can very clearly tell, alongside other smaller scale DLX figures, Optimus Prime is a big boy. Just wrapping up on the Threezero DLX scale Jetfire from Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Now, there is a lot to love here, but at the same time this guy is kind of a little frustrating. Not because he's a bad figure, because he absolutely isn't. This guy is great. But because he does have to break down and combine with Prime, if you're just picking this guy up for the Jetfire component, he is a little bit fragile. His joints are super stiff, but a lot of pieces will fall off when you're trying to pose him. It's just the name of the game here. Now, he can still pull off a bunch of poses, but he doesn't come with a ton of accessories. I can forgive that once again because of the combining component, but having included some missiles and blast effects, because when he first transforms, he fires off a bunch of missiles, that would have been a very nice touch. Also, including the spark that he rips out of his chest, I thought would have been a must, but unfortunately, it simply isn't here. But all of that being said, if you're picking this guy up solely to combine with DLX Prime, oh yes, you are in for a treat. He looks incredible. This is 100% a shelf stealer, an attention grabber. As soon as someone walks into your collection room, this is what they are going to look at. Because there is a lot going on, there are a ton of details, there are a ton of parts and pieces, plus it's a big, beefy Optimus Prime with a bunch of wings and jetpack pieces. What is there not to love? I know that going into this, I thought, yeah, it's gonna be cool, but how good could it possibly be? Boy, was I wrong. This guy is now getting a prime position, yes, pun intended, in the display. Now, once again, I do have to say a massive thank you to Threezero for sending this production sample. If you are looking to grab him, he is available from toyswonderland.com, and so too is Optimus Prime. Link for that is in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and a points-based reward system. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe and bell notification icon, plus the join button for more info on Justin's Collection plus the channel membership, if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.